The crash that changed everything. Michael Chen stared at the wall of monitors in his corner office, watching his empire crumble in real time. Red numbers cascaded down every screen like digital blood. His fintech company, Nexus Financial, had just experienced what his CTO was calling a catastrophic system failure. "How long?" Michael's voice was hollow. "We don't know," stammered David, his head of IT, sweat beading on his forehead. "The entire transaction processing system is down. We're losing approximately $2.3 million per minute." Michael closed his eyes. 15 years of work, thousands of employees depending on him, millions of customers unable to access their money. His company's valuation had hit $8 billion just last month. Now, watching the emergency indicators flash across his screens, he wondered if there would be anything left by morning. "Get everyone in the operations center," he said, his jaw tight. "I don't care if it's 11 p.m. I want every engineer we have on this." The operations center looked like a war room. 50 of the brightest minds in technology huddled over keyboards, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of error messages. Michael had hired these people from MIT, Stanford, and Carnegie Mellon. He'd paid them small fortunes, and now they all wore the same expression, panic mixed with confusion. "It's the legacy code," explained Sarah Kim, his lead architect. "Something in the old payment processing module. It's like it's corrupted itself. Every fix we attempt triggers 5 more errors. The legacy code hasn't been touched in 8 years, Michael said. It's been rock solid." "Until tonight," Sarah replied grimly. Michael loosened his tie. The air conditioning was running full blast, but the room felt suffocating. News alerts were already appearing on financial websites. Nexus Financial experiencing major outage. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Board members, investors, regulators. He'd stopped answering an hour ago. "Sir?" A young programmer named James approached hesitantly. "We think we need to do a complete system rollback. Reset everything to last week's configuration. How long would that take?" 18 to 24 hours. "And we'd lose all transaction data from the past week." Michael's stomach dropped. "That's not an option. We're talking about pension deposits, mortgage payments, payroll transfers. We can't just erase a week of people's financial lives." "Then I don't know what to tell you," James said, his voice cracking. "This code it's like it's alive and fighting us." At midnight, Michael made a decision he never thought he'd make. "I'm going out," he announced. His executive assistant, Patricia, looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Going out? Michael, the company is burning." "I know." He grabbed his coat. "I can't think in here. I'll be back in an hour." The October air was cold as he walked aimlessly through downtown Seattle. The streets were mostly empty, just a few late-night stragglers and the occasional taxi. Michael found himself in front of a small diner called Rosie's, its neon sign flickering weakly. Through the window, he could see it was nearly deserted. He pushed through the door. A bell chimed. "Sit anywhere, hun," called a voice from behind the counter. Michael slid into a booth near the window. His phone continued its relentless buzzing. He turned it face down on the table. The waitress approached with a pot of coffee. She was probably in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. Her name tag read Emma. "Rough night?" she asked, filling his cup without asking. Michael let out a bitter laugh. "You could say that. Want to talk about it or want me to leave you alone? I'm not sure anymore." He wrapped his hands around the warm mug. "Do you ever feel like everything you've built is just sand, and you've been ignoring the tide coming in?" Emma leaned against the booth, considering. "I think everyone feels that way sometimes, but sand can be rebuilt. It's just sand, not when millions of people depend on your sandcastle." She raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot of pressure for one person." Michael looked at her properly for the first time. There was something grounding about her presence, an easiness that felt foreign to him after hours in the pressure cooker of his operations center. "What do you do?" Emma asked. "When you're not having existential crises in diners at midnight?" "I run a financial technology company. Or I did, until about 5 hours ago when our entire system decided to implode." He didn't know why he was telling her this. Maybe because she was a stranger. Maybe because he was too exhausted to maintain his CEO persona. "Nexus Financial?" Emma's eyes widened slightly. Michael's head snapped up. How did you? It's all over the news feeds. My friend couldn't access her account to pay rent. Emma poured herself a cup of coffee and sat down across from him without asking. Legacy code problems? Michael stared at her. How would you know that? Emma shrugged, a small smile playing at her lips. I read a lot. Tech news, mostly. It's what happens when you work graveyard shifts at a diner with no customers. She paused. Also, I used to be a software engineer. Used to be? Long story involving student debt, a startup that went belly up, and a series of unfortunate life choices. She waved her hand dismissively. But I keep up with things. Old habits. Michael found himself leaning forward. What would you do if you were in my situation? Emma was quiet for a moment, swirling her coffee. When I was in college, I worked on a project that sounds similar. Payment processing system for a university. Old code from the 90s that nobody wanted to touch. One day it just broke itself. What fixed it? We stopped trying to fix it from the outside. See, everyone kept treating the error messages as the problem, but the error messages were symptoms. The actual problem was a recursive loop in the memory management. Every time we tried to patch it, we were actually feeding the loop. Michael's pulse quickened. A recursive loop in memory management? Yeah. The system was essentially eating itself. The only way to stop it was to interrupt the loop at the kernel level, not the application level. Emma looked almost embarrassed. Sorry, you probably have much smarter people working on this than a diner waitress rambling about computer science. Michael was already pulling out his phone. No, keep talking. What else? For the next 20 minutes, Emma sketched diagrams on napkins, explaining her theory. Michael asked rapid-fire questions. She answered with a precision and depth that made it clear her used to be a software engineer was underselling her abilities significantly. Why aren't you doing this anymore? Michael finally asked. Engineering, I mean. Emma's smile faded slightly. Got burned out. The industry, it wasn't kind. And then life happened. My mom got sick, medical bills piled up, and suddenly being a waitress with flexible hours made more sense than coding 80 hours a week. Michael looked at the napkin diagrams spread across the table. What if I asked you to come look at our system? Right now, I'm in the middle of a shift. I'll pay for the entire diner's revenue for the night, and I'll pay you $10,000 just to consult for a few hours. Emma laughed. You're serious. My company is hemorrhaging money. If there's even a 1% chance you're right about this, it's worth every penny. Emma studied his face, then glanced at the empty diner. Old Joe, the cook, was nodding off in the back. There hadn't been another customer in over an hour. Let me check with my boss, she said. 30 minutes later, Emma walked into the Nexus Financial Operations Center wearing jeans and her diner uniform under Michael's offered blazer. 50 exhausted engineers looked up from their screens. Patricia's mouth fell open. David, the CTO, looked insulted. Everyone, Michael announced. This is Emma. She's going to take a look at our code. You brought a waitress to solve our system crash? David's voice dripped with condescension. Emma met his gaze evenly. Former senior engineer at Titanium Systems. Specialized in legacy financial code architecture. But yes, currently I pour coffee for a living. Do you want help? Or do you want to keep hemorrhaging $2.3 million per minute? The room went silent. Sarah Kim stood up from her station. I'll show you what we're working with. For the next hour, Emma sat at a terminal, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Michael watched from behind her, fascinated. She wasn't just reading code, she was understanding it, seeing patterns that his entire team had missed. There, she said finally, pointing at her screen. See this? Your garbage collection process is stuck in a recursive call. Every transaction that fails to process isn't being cleared from memory. It's being retained and retried infinitely. The system is drowning in its own failed attempts. But garbage collection is automatic, James protested. It's not something we coded. It is automatic, but you have a custom override here. Emma scrolled to a different file. Someone implemented a safety feature years ago to prevent transaction loss. But it's actually preventing cleanup. Every failed transaction is immortal. Sarah leaned over Emma's shoulder, her eyes widening. Oh my God. She's right. The safety net became a trap. How do we fix it? Michael asked. Emma's fingers were already moving. We need to manually flush the memory buffer, then implement a kill switch for the recursive calls, then restart the transaction processor with the override disabled. It's going to cause you to lose the transactions currently in limbo, maybe the last 20 minutes, but you can manually reconcile those later. Do it, Michael said. Sir, David interjected, we can't just let some random person. She's not. She's the first person all night who's actually understood the problem. Emma, do whatever you need to do. The room held its collective breath as Emma worked. Commands scrolled across her screen, arcane and precise. She paused occasionally, double-checking, then continued. Michael noticed her hands were completely steady. Whatever nervousness she might have felt was invisible. Flushing buffer in 3, 2, 1. Emma hit enter. Every screen in the operations center flashed red, then black. Oh God, someone whispered. Then, one by one, the screens began turning green. Transaction processors coming back online, systems responding, the cascade of error messages slowing, then stopping. Sarah Kim checked her monitoring dashboard. We're processing transactions again. System load is normalizing. Memory usage dropping to acceptable levels. A cheer erupted through the operations center. Engineers hugged each other, some crying with relief. Michael felt his knees go weak. Emma stood up from the terminal, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. You'll want to do a full audit of all your legacy safety features. I'm willing to bet this isn't the only ticking time bomb in there. Michael couldn't speak for a moment. You just saved my company. I just understood the code. Your team would have figured it out eventually. No, Sarah Kim said firmly. We wouldn't have. We were too close to it, too stressed. We needed fresh eyes. Michael turned to Emma. I want to hire you, full-time, name your position. Emma laughed, shaking her head. I appreciate that, but head of legacy systems, $400,000 base salary, full benefits, flexible hours if you need them for your mom, and a signing bonus of $100,000 to cover whatever medical bills are hanging over your head. The room went quiet again. Emma's eyes glistened. You don't have to. Yes, I do. You're exactly what this company needs. Someone who remembers that technology is supposed to solve problems, not create them. Someone who can see past the noise. He paused. Plus, I have a feeling you've got a lot more insights about where we're going wrong. Emma looked around the room at the faces watching her, some skeptical, some impressed, most just grateful. Then she looked back at Michael. Can I finish my shift at the diner first? I don't like leaving Joe hanging. Michael smiled, really smiled. For the first time in hours. Absolutely. Patricia will draw up the paperwork for Monday. As dawn broke over Seattle, Michael stood in his office watching the city wake up. The crisis was over. His company would survive. But more than that, he'd learned something about his own blindness. How easily you can surround yourself with credentials and miss the talent that's right in front of you, pouring coffee. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Emma. Thanks for the opportunity. Also, your encryption protocols are outdated. We should talk about that too. Michael laughed out loud. Yes, they definitely should talk about that. The sun rose golden over the water, and Michael Chen, billionaire CEO who'd almost lost everything, realized that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes it wears a name tag and knows more about your problems than your entire paid staff. And sometimes, just sometimes, the person who saves you is the one you never would have noticed if everything hadn't fallen apart first.